Hi guys, and welcome to my better late than never review of the HTC One M9. It took me quite a while to finally get it, but now I have it, and maybe it's not even that bad that it took me so long, because now Lollipop is way more mature than back almost half a year when it got released. Back then we had multitasking issues, battery life issues, and all those sorts of things. Now, with 5.5.1, I just got recently a few days ago, a lot of things should have been improved. I used it most of the time, like 3 weeks on 5.0.2. Then I got 5.1.1 and people claim battery life is a lot better, the temperatures got down, and a lot of smaller things improved. If all this is really true, we will see in my full review. And yeah, that actually wasn't planned to be a rhyme. But let's take a look at the design itself. First, a quick size comparison with the Sony Xperia Z3. We have a 5-inch display on the HTC One M9 and a 5.2-inch display on the Z3. As you can see, almost pretty much the same height. The One M9 is a little bit more narrow and a little bit thicker, but all in all, it is a quite compact device after all. Yes, it is a little bit taller than I would wish for it to be. Sure, I would wish the HTC bar to be gone, but after a while, I didn't really mind it being so long, because at first I thought the aspect ratio looks a little bit off, but it is definitely way more than just okay in my opinion. But what brings me to this thing? What I wanted to show off is one thing they did really smart about this design is this level or step we have here, because you actually, if you hold onto the device, only hold onto this small thing, and same as already on the S6 Edge, it makes the device feel a lot thinner than it actually is. And due to the nice curve on the back that is ergonomic, if you can call a phone ergonomic, the device itself feels a lot thinner and more compact than it is. And the good thing about the actual thing is it is quite a narrow device, because one-hand use is quite easy. You can reach to the other side without any bigger issues. So in terms of ergonomics and so on, it is really done nice. But about the back, the brushed aluminum with normal hands in my normal use over the last 3 weeks was amazing, because the device was absolutely super grippy. And I always thought, why do people always say it's so slippery? But at least here in my studio I get it, because it's like almost 40 degrees Celsius in here and my hands sweat a lot, and then I noticed definitely the device can feel slippery, but in normal use that wasn't the case. It can also pick up a little bit of grease, but for me it wasn't really an issue, but therefore it looks and feels just amazing. Otherwise, we have here the camera, the dual tone flash. On the top we have the IR blaster. On the left side we have the nano SIM slot. On the bottom we have micro USB and headphone jack. I like the position of the headphone jack. The position of the micro USB is a little bit odd, but definitely no problem. Here we have the micro SD card slot, the volume buttons and volume and the power button. I personally would wish for the power button be a little bit higher, because it is pretty much on the perfect position for me on the Z3, as you can see here, and they missed that perfect spot, at least for me personally, for about a centimeter. Therefore the positioning of the volume buttons is very good. If they would have raised everything about a centimeter, it would have been just perfect. But one thing that isn't so perfect is the actual buttons themselves, because I would have definitely preferred a volume rocker, because so many times I hit the power button or the volume button vice versa when I wanted to actually hit the other one, because there is no real distinction. Yes, we have a little bit of, as you can see here, a texture, but on a quick tap just in the darkness or somewhere else, it's just not enough to make a distinction. The buttons are also a little bit too flush, feel slightly mushy, and the tactile feedback isn't perfect. So at least on the right side of this device there is a little bit room for improvement. The rest otherwise is fine, and the overall impressions of the design and build quality are still great, because it feels very substantial, very nice and secure in the hand, feels very premium. And otherwise I don't really have anything else to complain. It is a bit tall and it looks therefore though still very nice. So let's get into the display. We have a 5-inch 1080p display, and as you can see here, text and everything is very crisp. And usually I'm not talking about the white point now, and the great thing is with 5.1.1 they introduced a really amazing thing, and that is called color temperature, because here you can see the default level. And you can see maybe on the camera that it is quite a little bit too warm, especially for me. I prefer colder colors, and as you can see here it's definitely warmer, but we can adjust that. And the coldest setting for me is pretty much the perfect one, and that is what lets me say the white point of this device is absolutely great. Nothing to complain, absolutely right where I want it to be. Also, as you can see here, colors, they are quite vibrant and vivid. Sometimes they can seem a little bit undersaturated though. The blacks, they are very nice, no problems here at all, quite good in terms of details. Contrast ratio is fine, colors just pop. Viewing angles are on the video maybe not that great, but in reality they are absolutely fine. So this leads me to the conclusion. We get a really nice display, and it is one of the best 1080p displays. Very bright, sunlight readability was no issue, colors are good, they could be a little bit punchy, and I would have really wished for, since we already have color temperature options, to get maybe something like a color calibration as well, then it would be really nice, but still it is one of the best 1080p's you can get. So let's check the sound. Yeah, I don't think anyone will be surprised if I say the sound is great. The maximum volume maybe isn't on a Nexus 6 level, but still very close to it. I've heard louder devices, but as a whole the sound is just very good, because we have a nice amount of bass, nice mids, clear highs, we have boom sound which can be enabled, and you have like two options, two different ones, but the default one is already the better one, and it sounds really nice. I would still give it maybe just a second place, because the first place for me is the Nexus 6, which sounds a lot louder and still has a great sound. This one in terms of quality is maybe a little bit better, but in a crowded place or so I just prefer loudness over quality, and you don't make nothing wrong. It is easy among the top 3 in terms of the sound quality. As for the performance, just so you can see, we have launched 8 apps, of one which is the settings, but just so you can see later if there may be some other things in terms of multitasking. Just for right now, let's check the scrolling here in the browser. As you can see here, absolutely super nice and smooth. The Snapdragon 810 has no issues at all getting along with that. So performance is great here also in Phoenix, absolutely nice. Absolutely responsive, super nice here in Palabra as well. As you can see, the scrolling is nice, absolutely no problem, and it is very responsive. As you can see here, multitasking is no problem at all. With 3 GB of RAM, even Lollipop has no issues. I had no trouble. Jumping was nice. The one thing that I would maybe complain is about the screen responsiveness on the sides, because usually I use my gestures to, for example, like here, activate Phoenix, which just doesn't work. Just for an example what I mean, for example here on the Z3 I can make these gestures to activate and launch my apps, and this doesn't really work that well. So as you can see here, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So the precision towards the side, same as already on the Galaxy S6, isn't enough for me, and almost a deal breaker, but for most other people it shouldn't. So multitasking is great, performance is great. How about the multitasking? We have, like you can see now, 9 apps open, everything is done. Is Riptide still in the cache? And no, it is not, but that is to be expected because we had 9 apps running. With 8 apps it actually was still running, so maybe the launch of the last app did throw it out. So how is the performance in games? And I can already say, before the game is starting, it is absolutely flawless and spot on. It is pretty much as good as performance can be within games. Very smooth. Yes, we have of course a few little slowdowns from time to time, but I've yet to see a device without any at all. But as you can see here, the performance, very smooth, very high frame rates, very detailed, not really any hiccups or so, no lag, works absolutely fine. So definitely better than the 801 or something similar, but also again not that far off. I will talk about the heat later, but as for the performance is super. We have a very responsive, fast acting device in games, in apps, everywhere. The performance is spot on. Yes, we have throttling, and even with the 5.1.1 update it didn't change. Still values in Antutu jump from 50,000 to like 38,000, but even throttled we are at about Snapdragon 801 levels, which is still good enough for games, for example, but in normal use, you won't really notice this throttling in games, in apps, nowhere else. And I already told this in my Snapdragon 810 video that you can check out as well. Performance at no point at all is an issue. The heat maybe is something else I will talk about after the battery life, and I will talk about the battery life now. In terms of charging, 5.1.1 should have improved something in terms of battery charge. I don't know really what, because before the update I had a full charge time of about 2 hours, which I still have on 5.1.1, so I didn't really notice a change. The only thing I noticed that the device didn't get warm at all while charging, but that's a minor thing. As for the battery life though, I am a little bit disappointed, and when I say a little bit, that's almost an understatement, because just look at the values here, just so you see that I'm not lying. What we can see here, screen on time after 99% used, 3 hours and 18 after 18 hours. Here we have 3 hours over the course of about 1 day. Here we have almost 4 hours, but that was already only on Wi-Fi. So that is one of the best values I actually got. Here we have about 3 hours, 1 day, 5 hours. Here we have slightly over 3 hours on a day. Once again, 3.5. Then we see 3 hours over the course of 1 day and 3 hours. And this is what I call already 2 days, because I got to work 2 times and got back with about 2 hours and 40. So this means, at least from my experience, and I had a brightness of 65%, I expect to get 3.5 to 3 hours, solid 3 hours, definitely, maybe with a little bit spare room to 3.5. Over the course of 2 days, I would say 2.5. So not really that great. This is about Galaxy S6 territory, which I am a little bit disappointed, because so many comments on my Snapdragon 810 review told me battery life has dramatically improved. At least it didn't in my use. I had exactly the same outcomes before and afterwards. I didn't really notice a big difference at all. I would have wished for a solid 4 hours, then I would have been perfectly happy. But if 3.5 hours are good enough for you, or if you just use lower brightness settings, you can get away with more. So this should be fine. And about the temperature, I already told it in my Snapdragon 810 video. This device, due to its all metal design, feels warmer and warmer for a longer period of time very easy, because once it heats up, which it does quite fast, because after already like 5 minutes it gets a little bit awkwardly warm. On highest load, while doing maybe some camera or gaming or so, the apps told me like 48 degrees Celsius, which is a lot in terms of your body temperature. It feels awkward. It is not an issue, so you would feel like you would burn yourself, but it just doesn't feel comfortable. That's pretty much the only thing I can say, and I don't see throttling as an issue, just the feel in hand is a little bit odd. In terms of software, let's check it. We have Sense, and personally, yeah, the browser, I mean the launcher, as you can see, we have vertical scrolling, which is a little bit odd. You have to get used to it, but it works fine. We have a theming engine, which is definitely nice, and it is quite flexible. I don't really want to go a lot deeper into that, because there are tons of videos you can get about that. Otherwise, in terms of display, you get the typical thing. The color temperature is a really nice thing to have. We also get double tap, but only if the device was moved before. If the device was laying on your table for a while, it won't work. We also have double tap to sleep, and you have like different options, like just swiping and going back to your home screen. So this is definitely nice. Nothing groundbreaking, but nice to see after all. Otherwise, what do we get? If you can see, for personalize, you can change the typical stuff. You can also rearrange the buttons, add some. If you can see, we have turn off screen, auto rotate, hide navigation bar, and quick settings. So definitely a few nice enhancements. Not really any bloaty stuff. Yeah, maybe something like, I don't know, blink feed. It's not my personal thing, because I didn't like that I have these icons here. Without these icons, I would have enjoyed way more, because why do I need to see them all the time? So a little bit odd. Otherwise, one thing I don't get at all is the design of the quick settings. It looks completely outdated, like back in the ice cream sandwich times. And with theming, it still stays in terms of this design. You can change the colors and so on, but that's it. So as a whole, I would say in terms of software, it is solid. It does the job fine. It is not really bloated. We have a few nice little enhancements like color temperature, also some boom sound and so on. We have theming options and all that is nice, but it's nothing particularly outstanding anymore. It just didn't blow me away, and especially the UI design itself felt a little bit dated to me. That's it for the software. Now let's get to the camera, and we all know how everyone thinks about it. What is my personal impression? First of all, let's check the pictures. As you can see, the first picture looks very blurry, and I would call the camera a big hit or miss, because you can get great pictures, but you can also get quite bad ones. Here, for example, I've seen this picture a lot of times already better, and I've done the shot a lot of times, and as you can see here, very overexposed, a similar shot, still overexposed, so not perfect. So 3 times the same shot and still 3 times it looks different. Low light performance was okay, not particularly mind-blowing, and as you can see, hit or miss again, because 2 times the same shot and 2 times with a different outcome. A little bit sad to see. This picture in quite low light was actually quite good. Here, this one as well. But what you will notice, the closer you get to an object, the more you will notice one thing. It has trouble, or it doesn't have a big sweet spot in terms of sharpness. I noticed it quite a lot of times, and on this picture it is especially noticeable. You have a very small sweet spot, because everything outside of the sharpest point looks quite unsharp. Here the exposure is actually quite good, because we have the bright sky in the background with the tree in the foreground, and that has been done quite nice. Here again, once again, looks quite good, no complaint here. Here once again you can see the sweet spot of the sharpness just isn't that great. Autofocus didn't work properly. Here once again, okay shot, but nothing particularly mind-blowing. This one was very nice. Also here, and that leads me to one thing you will see right now, because if you just point and shoot, the pictures are quite okay, but there's a huge difference. As you can see now, this was done by tapping, focusing, and then shooting. You will see a big difference in terms of exposure levels. And I noticed one thing: if you just point and shoot, you get a hit or miss. Sometimes it is good, sometimes it is bad. And if you focus or tap and then make the shot, it comes out better, but still, you never know if you get a good shot right after you've done it. And it is most of the times not even visible on the screen itself. So if everything works out perfectly fine, you get really great shots, but to get this, it just needs sometimes a lot of luck or a lot of effort from your side. You can get things like the RAW mode and then do a lot of that stuff post-processing, but who wants that really? So yeah. Also, in terms of the video quality, the video, what I was very surprised, had or seemed to had no autofocus at all. Everything was very, very odd, because it was smooth and the quality was okay, not particularly mind-blowing, but the lack of autofocus was very odd. So I've got through all of my categories. Let's get to the recap then, not to make it any longer. Design and build quality are outstanding. It feels great, solid, quite nice design. It looks beautiful in my opinion. So no real complaints here. It's definitely a looker and it feels very good. As for the display, maybe not the very best out there. It can compete with an S6, and the colors sometimes are a little bit undersaturated, but in terms of sharpness, white point, viewing angles and everything else, it is absolutely great and still among the best 1080p displays. Sound, definitely among the top 3. Very loud, not the loudest though, but very clear, just nice sound, so definitely great. And the case that it is, the fact that it is dual front-facing stereo, sorry, is a big bonus. As for the performance, I already told it, I'm absolutely happy with the performance. It is one of the best performing devices and definitely better performing than the S6, because the performance was very consistent throughout everything, and even if the device should already throttle, it wasn't noticeable in real life use at all. Battery life though, not that impressed. Charging times with about 2 hours are fine, but a battery life of about 3.5 hours in my typical use was a little bit underwhelming, but not the end of the world. And the fact that it gets a little bit warmer than most devices and it feels warmer for a longer period of time is something you will have to decide about. Software, just a fine job. Of course, it's always a personal preference if you like it or not. Personally, I found it a little bit dated, but the job did get done perfectly. As for the camera, like I said, the best way to describe it is hit or miss. You can get really nice shots, really sharp, but you can also get just about average shots, and you sometimes can get even quite bad shots. So, is it great? Is it bad? Is it good? So, I think that's really up for you to decide. for your personal preferences. If you want the device with a great feel in hand, with a great sound, with a great overall look and feel, with a very good display, and don't mind the fact so much that you don't have the best camera, you have about 3.5 hours of battery life, and if that's good enough for you, and that is what you have to decide. If you can live with the drawbacks and therefore get the good sides, it's definitely a nice device, but personally I think there is a lot of rooms for improvement. But my main gripe about this device is the Snapdragon 810. If they would have used something different, 808, 801, 805, okay, 801 doesn't make so much sense, but if the 805, I think it would have been the overall better, we would have got a better battery life, a colder device. But I don't think I have to drag it any longer. I told you everything. You should get all the information, and it's time for you to tell me what you think. If you have the device or if you thought about getting it or so, leave it in the comments. And if you like this review, please leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Until next time, bye.